Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
This episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Didn't file with TurboTax last year? That's in the past. Now, Taxes is getting the TurboTax app and filing your own taxes for free if you didn't file with them last year. File by February 18th. All tax forms, all 100% free. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. New filers and filers who didn't use TurboTax last year only must start and file your own taxes in-app by February 18th. Excludes TurboTax Live. Full terms at TurboTax.com.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise Podcast. It's Thursday night, so we're going to talk to our old friend Tom Loxas about the Cubs and the Bears and whatever else might come up. Tom wasn't on last week for a very good reason. It was his birthday. So happy birthday, Tom.
Hey, thanks. Feeling older.
Breaking news on the podcast, tragic. Dick Button has passed away. Did you know Dick Button was still alive?
I don't know who Dick Button is.
Dick Button,
So
remember the guy with the bow tie who did figure skating analysis in the Olympics from probably
that guy. Yeah, okay.
the 50s to the 90s?
Oh, yeah.
He's 95 years old.
So, wow. That's a good
Cause
run.
of death, being 95 years old, I think. Virginia,
That's a good way to go.
Virginia has outlived another one. Congratulations. So while you were off, Jed was hard at work, and the Cubs have a 36-year-old closer. When has that ever gone badly for them? Goose Gossage, Dave Smith, Doug Jones. Doug Jones? They had Doug, not Todd. And I had another one. I had 4. Oh, Rick Aguilera.
Oh, yeah.
Those all worked out fine. So what do you think of Ryan Presley? He's on the younger end of those 4.
Yeah, I mean, some of the, the peripherals and even some of his regular stats are definitely trending, in the wrong direction. But I think it's still a good move. I think it's still a solid pickup. I mean, I know they tried to get, Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates first. Tanner Scott thing, apparently they put in actually a half decent offer, but the Dodgers were like, nope.
They're supposedly the Cub offer was greater and had no deferred money in it.
Really?
And people were all upset, but you know why he picked the Dodgers? Because he gets to pitch for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Cubs have to pay the loser tax. You gotta outbid the really good teams because here's a surprise. Players like to go play for really good teams. The Cubs were that. The Cubs used to be the beneficiary of that. They squandered that relatively quickly after the World Series. Presley he's been a very good closer, been a very good postseason closer. And then last year, he was the setup man for Josh Hader. And I think a lot of people, they blamed his early struggles on that, like adjusting to the new role. But mostly it seemed that I don't know. In the 8th, is it harder to throw a fastball by somebody in the 8th inning than it is in the 9th? Because that seemed to be his big issue, was his fourth seamer was getting hit back at him faster than he was throwing it in, which could be a problem.
Yeah. But, the Cubs could make some tweaks in the pitch lab and maybe even get him to throw some of his other, off-speed stuff more. But,
Astros don't have a good
because the
track
Astros
record
don't know what they're doing when it comes to pitching.
of helping pitchers. I saw that too. There was a guy like, "Oh, the Cubs are really good at this. They'll fix him." Like, yeah, you know who else is good at it? The Astros are good at it, and they decided that was enough. I mean, I think for what you paid, they gave up a Class A pitcher, and they're only paying $8.5 million of his salary.
Yeah,
and there's really no. If it doesn't work, it doesn't hurt you. I mean, it does, I guess, if he gives up runs. But it can't be a disaster given what you gave up. It can only, and if it works out well, you look like a genius. So,
yeah, no, I still very much like the move. It was interesting yesterday. He was on the Marquee Network doing an interview from his car.
And, I saw that.
Yeah, he said that the Cubs told him he's going to close sometimes, so they didn't even promise him the closer role like some reported. So I would imagine that means Porter Hodge is probably going to get some of that action. And who knows, maybe if the Cubs end up still getting another guy like David Robertson, maybe he's in the mix. Yeah, I'd be in favor of that.
Do you think it's because they told him, Ryan, we're going to win so many games. It's going to be physically impossible for you to get all the saves.
Right.
You're going to need some days off. I think that's why they told him he wasn't going to be the closer every day. We're probably going to win 6 games a week. I don't think we can pitch you 6 times. So we'll let Porter have a couple. Maybe not.
Yeah. I hope this doesn't backfire because I really do like the fact that Jed has decided to try to have a legit bullpen. So,
yeah, it only took him 2 years to figure out. He only let it cripple 2 seasons. Whoops.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with taking, shots on guys, and bullpens are totally variable every year, but you got to have a guy that you can trust in the 9th inning.
Well, and that's why you really have to attack them in bulk, because even if you're good at picking up relievers, which ironically that was like the hallmark of Jed's early GM was finding guys and who ended up being good bullpen pieces who he then traded. And then when the team got good enough to win, he lost the magic. But you need if you need 3 relievers, you probably need to bring in 5 guys, because 2 of them are suck. I mean, you even see that year to year. I remember the great Brian Dunsing. His first year with the Cubs, he was great. Second year, he was terrible for no other reason than he was Brian Dunsing. And, he was okay, but he was pitched better than he should have his first year, and he pitched worse his second year. And that's just the way bullpens work. So, yeah. And like you said, they apparently are still pounding the pavement looking for a reliever. And they want to bring back David Robertson to pair him with the guy he was traded for. Him and Ben Brown can hang out, and Cubs win that trade. They'll have both of them.
Well, Robertson's got to be pushing 40, right? So he's right up our alley.
He's there to make Ryan Presley feel young.
Yeah, I was saying the other day was it yesterday on Twitter that Ben Johnson's trying to put together a younger staff than the Cubs bullpen.
Yeah,
like all the guys he's looking at are like 28, 29, and Jed's like, all right, we'd like these 36-year-old guys.
David Robertson.
No,
How old is he? Turns 40 on April 9th.
There you go. See?
He's pitched 16 seasons, and he missed a full year. So his 17 years in the big leagues. 2020, he sat out the COVID year with some kind of injury.
COVID.
Probably. He pitched in 36 games for the 2022 Cubs with a 2.23 ERA. Only gave up 23 hits in 40 innings, 51 strikeouts. Got traded to the Phillies for Ben Brown. And was good for them, too. Pitched for the Marlins and the Mets in 23, and then the Rangers last year. And he may very well be coming back to pitch for the Cubs. Just an embarrassment of riches now in the bullpen. Or just an embarrassment. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so apparently the Cubs are in on Robertson, according to Bruce Levine, and then of course they're still being connected to Alex Bregman and pretty much any Padres pitcher.
So the Bregman thing, Dave and I talked a little bit about it on Tuesday.
Yeah,
because my whole thing was do not let the draft pick compensation scare you off of
yeah.
Because I literally went through all. They would give up a second and a five. It would cost them a second and a five, second and a fifth. And I went through and looked at all the 2s and 5s in recent years, and nobody good yet. Best one, probably. Well, they traded. What's his name? Oh, I can't think of it. The pitcher to the Dodgers in the Bush trade. Jackson Ferris,
yeah. I couldn't think of his first name.
and then James Triantos was a second round draft pick, and I was shocked and sickened to look at Triantos's slugging in the minors. He's averaged 6 homers and 19 doubles. It's like there's no extra base power there at all. So the Dustin Pedroia comparisons, not so good. But yeah, it's just
that's
like,
right.
just you're getting, and you're on top of it. So you're giving up those 2 picks. You're surrendering those, but you're getting a really good player. Like there's, that's why it costs. That's why it costs that when you get a guy. And the Bregman thing, I don't know how real it is on either side. It sounds like he could sign with the Tigers tomorrow, and just doesn't want to.
Yeah.
And so it could be that he really wants to go back to Houston, and they've got to have some kind of leverage to try to get the Astros. But I was skeptical about, the Astros need to. Supposedly they did the Presley trade because they needed to save some money because they don't want to go over the luxury tax to bring Bregman back. But they didn't save that much money. $8.5 because they kicked in $5.5 million or whatever it is in the Presley thing. They supposedly traded Tucker. That was a big motivation, was because they didn't want to pay the luxury tax, and that was without any plan to bring Bregman back.
Right.
So I don't know. It's not just the Cubs who would have to suck it up and decide they want to pay the luxury tax. The Astros would too. And I don't think they've ever paid it. I don't think Jim Crane has ever paid it and just doesn't want to. So it might be more. He might be more in play for the Cubs than we think, but they're not going to want to do any. They're not going to want any commitment, at least no firm commitment after this year. They're going to want the original Cody Bellinger deal, where
maybe like a 3-year deal.
Year 2 is kind of a
with opt-outs.
Things went sideways in year 1, and you've got this is your little fallback. But the plan for both sides is you're going to be here for a year and you're going to leave. So I don't know, but to me the craziest part of it with the Astros is, did you see what their supposed defensive alignment would be if they bring him back?
Yeah.
Isak Paredes at second base and Jose Altuve in left.
Yeah, that's not great.
Wouldn't you just play Paredes in left so you only have one guy out of position instead of 2? Although he's got such incredible range in the infield, I'm sure he's a ball of fire in the outfield.
Or just put Bregman in left.
Yeah, that's what you get for trying to leave. Yeah. You won the Gold Glove at third last year. Yeah, you can go to left. I mean, if it's good enough for Ian Happ, it's good enough for you, Alex. Suck it up. Go play a little left.
I would do 3 years on him. I mean,
I would too. I'm just saying what I think the Cubs.
No, I hear you. I don't think that if I'm Jed, I would not be afraid to do 3 years because I mean, I've heard that 5 years was what originally he was looking for, but he'd rather play for either Houston or the Cubs than the other teams that were pursuing him. But we'll see. We'll see how real it is. I think that if they did 3 years, I would be surprised, but at the same time, I think that'll be a good move. I think he's got 3 years left in that bat.
I do too. And then you've got Matt Shaw and Nico for second.
Mm-hmm.
And you make a decision at the end of during the season or at the end of the season if you're going to trade Nico or not.
Yeah, let's say Nico is healthy in spring training and teams call for him. Yeah, now you've got that flexibility to make that trade and save yourself some money. And especially if Shaw looks like he's going to, be ready to hit, which I think even if he wasn't, you'd still have a guy like Birdie to throw into the mix. Yeah, I would, I'd be in favor of, regardless, I know some people have said that, Nico's WAR, measures up to Bregman's, but do you agree with me? Like all WAR is not equal. A guy who gives you WAR on defense versus a guy like Bregman that actually gives you a longer lineup, especially with more pop, that's more valuable to this team.
I would say that if the Cubs had a better offense, they could easily Nico becomes a really nice asset.
Right.
But they need offense. And the assumption would be that you wouldn't be going from Nico's well above average second base defense to terrible defense. You would think that Shaw would give you adequate defense at second base.
For sure.
It's not like Daniel Murphy is coming in to play second base. It's this is a guy who's should be a average to slightly above average defensive second baseman with a lot more offense than Nico. So yeah,
right. And where do you think Bregman would hit in the lineup?
Second.
Yeah, if Tucker's not hitting second,
right in front of Tucker,
he's going to hit anywhere between 2 and 4.
Probably second or third, right? Either Craig puts Kyle in front of him or Kyle behind him.
Yeah, or you can slide Suzuki in any of those positions. So, bottom line is he's at he's right in the meat of your order. Like Nico's not giving you that production.
No, Nico should be hitting 8th.
Right. Or at the top of the lineup. But the bottom line is that, Bregman's just a more valuable commodity than Nico for the Cubs, the way they're structured.
He repeated his thing at the convention that he said before, and he basically lived up to it last year, is he just wants his best players to get the most at-bats.
Right.
And so that to me says Hap's going to lead off again. Because that's the best place for him. I don't really need him getting the most at-bats, but honestly, the thing he really does well is he gets on base.
Yeah.
And so he should bat first.
Yeah, if you bat him and Tucker 1-2, you might have something there because, Hap's going to get on in front of him.
So, it would be nice. To me, the whole thing is, what did you trade for Kyle Tucker for this year? If you're not, this seems like to me, that trade that said, we're going for it. We're going to really try to win. And now you're sitting here we're recording this on the 30th of January, and Bregman is just sitting out there. And if you made him a good offer, you'd get him. It's not like, they know what it would take to get him. They've had enough conversations with him. Why wouldn't you just go do it? And
do you
put
think
those two
Jed's
guys together? And
do you think Jed's just trying to have him fall into his lap? You know what I mean?
I just get the feeling that Jed is hoping the Astros would just sign him and take the dilemma off of his hands. I think he gets to a point where it's like, the fans are starting to expect I'm actually going to do this. But
see, I feel like there's 2 moves out there for him. It's either Bregman or it's either he's going to trade for King or Cease from San Diego. And in either of those cases, I feel really good about our off season. But it's not going to be, both. So I think he's just got to decide which move makes the most sense for him.
They're far more likely.
I'd be fine with either one.
They're far more likely to do the trade than they are to do the signing.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially since both of those guys are going to be free agents. So there's not a lot of commitment there.
Yeah, because they've got. I think it was Sahadev. Is that who wrote the? Yeah, and he looked at Let's see, what trade was he basing the return on? That's great podcasting with me scrolling through an article trying to remember. Was he the one that was doing it? I thought he was doing it. Maybe it was Sarami at Bleacher Nation, but somebody was taking either Cease or King and trying to look at a previous trade by other teams for someone of similar value. And what he came up with was either Wicks or Assad plus either Casey or Alcantara. I'm going to keep calling him Alcantara because of Arismendi and the whole Len Casper getting yelled at for pronouncing his name wrong and saying, well, I pronounced his name. I asked him how to pronounce his name. But don't tell me I'm pronouncing his name wrong. I actually asked him how to pronounce his name.
He had a good source.
Yeah. I think in that case, I would be far more likely to trade Casey than I would be to trade Alcantara. I just feel like Kevin, the potential is he can do more things, which means if his entire game doesn't turn into what you think, he's still a valuable player. Where if Casey doesn't hit for power in the big leagues, there's not much there, I don't think. So I would keep the more well-rounded player.
I was against trading, Casey in some like unexciting deal, but if you're going to get a top of the rotation guy like one of those two, then that's going to put you in position to win the division running away.
Right. That's why you have these prospects.
Absolutely.
They're for one of two reasons. They impact your lineup or they help you get someone who impacts your team.
Yeah.
And you don't just throw him in a deal to get, a third starter or the guy who's going to hit sixth in your lineup. But you absolutely trade him if it's a guy that's going to be your first or second starter.
Yeah, especially if you even have any seriousness about trying to re-sign Tucker, then it doesn't hurt as much because your outfield's set.
Do you think?
I mean, even if the Cubs did get Dylan Cease, let's just say, and David Robertson, how many games do you think the Brewers finish in front of us?
Well, it's funny. Like, so
there was the lead to 4, maybe.
There was a 10-game spread last year between the two. I forgot that. For some reason, I thought the Brewers won 90 games. They won 93. They finished a full 10 games ahead of the Cubs. And the Cubs have added Kyle Tucker, which obviously will help. And the Brewers have don't have Willie Adames or Devin Williams anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't think the Cubs have made up the whole gap. I mean, 10 games is a lot. But then
Jackson Chourio is going to be MVP. Mark it down.
I still don't get the weird thing. The Brewer writer for the Kurt Hogg, he keeps insisting that the last home run Bob Uecker ever called was the Jackson Chourio grand slam. It's like, no, it was the Pete Alonso where Bob sounded like he had lost all will to live.
Yeah, that was sad.
And apparently it was his last regular season home run. I think that doesn't count. The reason Kurt wanted to make a big deal was it was a 90-year-old calling a 20-year-old's home run. That was why he damn all facts. Yeah, Chourio's a very good player. And then his little brother, who I wanted the Cubs to get I wanted him to work out some kind of trade with the Guardians just to get him so that he'd fight fire with fire. He's rocketing up the prospect list now. Jason with an I. I in the middle, not at the beginning. It'd be very difficult to spell Jason starting with an I. Jaison. Jaison. Do you think the Cubs would be more likely to want to get Dylan Cease because then they would actually have another pitcher that they drafted on their team?
Then they can officially claim victory on the trade.
Yeah.
I think that's what Jed's looking for. Retribution.
Yep. Well, we've got
but if they trade Casey in the deal, then he kind of loses the Darvish trade twice, right?
I feel like the Darvish trade is three of the 4 are completely bombed out already. Like Owen's all that's left. Two of them aren't even in college yet. 2 of them aren't even in the system anymore. Actually, I don't know. It might be all 3. I don't remember who they were. They had a bunch of them. They had weird names, but yeah. The U trade and the Schwarber DFA. That's quite an off season.
That was a
way to go.
off season. Just blame it on COVID.
Yeah. Jed's like, I got to admit I got the Schwarber thing wrong. Really? Oh, you're a big man to admit that. The guy with the most home runs in the National League since the day you cut him. Nice job. And for me, it would have been so nice because that would have meant that they would have gotten rid of Hap instead. I wouldn't have had to. He'd have been getting hair plugs in some other town. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Do you think if they can't get a trade with the Padres, though, that they're still... Are they like... Is this like a luxury? Or are they looking at their rotation like, ugh, we've got to find somebody? Because there's a massive difference between having either Michael King or Dylan Cease in this rotation and just having this rotation.
Well, my thinking was going into the season that they would, give one of the kids a shot to really shine, whether, be Horton or Brown, maybe just surprise them. But at the same time, if they were contending, then, at the deadline, they would trade for a rental.
Yeah.
But if Jed has the flexibility to trade for a rental now, that might gain you 3-4 more wins for the season. So that's crucial.
Yeah, and nobody's really sure. The Padres haven't done anything in the offseason. So the assumption is they want to cut salary, which is why the people keep connecting teams to them for either Cease or King or both. But nobody's 100% sure that that Preller actually has to do it. And there's a big difference. Like if he really feels like he's got to get rid of one of the two salaries, then this is probably something that happens in spring training. And if he doesn't, it's probably something then that he can drag out and see, because the Padres are going to be good.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to get out from one of these pending free agents, right? They're gonna recoup it. At least one of them they're trying. Is my thinking, and hang on to the other one.
Yeah. I mean,
I like the idea of King. I'd love to get Cease back, believe me, but at the same time, King, you never know. You might actually have a shot at extending him.
Yeah, and he's a little more of a... I gotta be careful how I say this. He's far more of a consistent pitcher than Cease. So when Cease is really good, he's really good. And then there are times he's just not. We just can't throw anything for a strike. Where King, you pretty much know what you're going to get. And
I would agree with that.
Let's see, last year, 13-9 with a 2.95 ERA. It's the first time he made more than 9 starts in a season.
Yeah, no matter how you stack them, Steele, Shota, and King, that's solid.
Yeah, you have a really good top of the rotation.
Yeah, and then it doesn't really, matter who's 4 and 5.
Yeah, Cease he had a 3.47 ERA and 33 starts. King had a higher ERA plus 139. And they're only a year apart. King's 29, Cease is 28.
Right.
Well, fine. We'll just take Michael King.
King might actually cost just a little less, too. But you never know.
Yeah, I don't know if there's... Cease is... If people still think his upper end is still... his ceiling is still higher, it could be.
Like you said, when he's on, he's got some of the best stuff in the game.
Yeah, he finished second in Cy Young voting with 22 with the White Sox and fourth last year with the Padres. So he's one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Yeah.
King, let's see. Did he get any? 7th in the Cy Young last year.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Well, no Shota. One of the things Dave and I talked about on Tuesday was, the Cubs open on the 18th of March.
Yeah.
And then they have a week of spring training again. We're trying to figure out why is that a thing? Like, why can't you go play your 2 games in Japan on Tuesday and Wednesday and then open on Friday or Saturday? Do you really need, is it that, you can't overcome the jet lag that you have to get reacclimated for an entire week before you can play again? For no other reason than it just makes the season weird. Like, you're playing 2 real games in the middle of the month, and then you go back to playing fake games again, and then you start up again. It's all very strange.
Yeah, why are they doing it that far apart? Is it just like the adjustments of the jet lag they're trying to accommodate?
They always do. They did this when the Cubs went way back in, it was 2000, right?
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah,
the
I remember
same
I
way.
woke up to watch that game.
Yeah, the games are at 5:10 a.m. our time, which isn't that bad. The older I get, 5 o'clock, that doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, I get up at 5:30.
Yeah, you just have to get up 20 minutes earlier. One of the dogs usually will get me up at 5 because they want to go out and they want to go to the bathroom. I'll just have to stay up instead of getting back in bed. The whole thing is odd. Cubs are going over. Both teams are going over early, and they're going to play some Japanese league teams to get tuned up, get used to the domes, which is kind of nice. But I don't know. I feel like there's a hard transition. The bench, the Cubs bench to me is, I don't understand it. So right now it would be whoever's not catching. So hopefully Carson Kelly most days. And then it's Vidal Brujan, John Birdie, maybe Gage Workman, although I have a feeling he's going to be in Iowa. And then if they keep a kid to be the 5th outfielder, it would be either like Casey or Alcantara or Canario. Maybe he's the most likely one because they want the other 2 to get more at bats.
Yeah, I would think it'd be Canario.
It just,
you never know.
You've got a manager that really wants to be able to play the advantages and use the bench, and then you just give him nothing for a bench. Nice job. I don't get it. That's one of the easy places to stash somebody useful. You don't need, I guess the closest I can think of a guy who has a specialty is Birdie, right? Like he can play all 4 infield spots, and he can run. So you've got you can run him for some slow dude at the end of the game and then leave him in for defense. But I don't know. I mean, we saw Counsell, he kept sending Patrick Wisdom up last year because he wanted a right-hander with some pop on the bench, even though, Wisdom wasn't doing anything. And it's like maybe they don't watch the games. And they're like, he doesn't really want anybody. No, that's fine. We can go cheap there. That'll be great. I don't get it. Now, I could be completely off, right? Because you get real close to spring training, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of veterans. You get the Mike Talkmans of the world, who you sign to a minor league, to a non-roster invite, and then they make the team. So maybe it's just stupid to look at the bench on the 30th of January and be like, well, he hasn't done anything.
Yeah, unfortunately, the off season is just getting, it's still long. So luckily there was more action this year earlier than it was the last 2 years, but there's still a lot of guys lying around, and that's part of the problem. Yeah. And they'll probably do that.
It gets exacerbated as teams fall. Every team's in love with their prospects. And So there's a lot of 40-man roster spots taken up by guys that in 5 years, if you go back and look at the 40-man roster in spring training, you're going to be like, who the hell are half these guys? I don't even know who they are. That the Cubs were like, and every team was like, oh no, we've got to, Although it was weird to me, I guess it shows what they think of Luis Vazquez, that he was the one that they DFA'd for Birdie. Because he's another guy with he's an excellent fielder. He can do that no matter what, even if he doesn't hit. If you need somebody to come up and play shortstop for a week, he can handle it. He might not get any hits, but you're going to be fine. But they'll keep a guy like Benjamin Cowles on the 40-man, who apparently nobody but Jed and Carter thinks is worth a damn. I don't know. I always like it though. The guys who sign and then are in the offseason, oh good, I'm gonna go camp with the Cubs, and then are like immediately released. Remember Ryan Lavarnway, the catcher from the catcher prospect from the Red Sox, and one winter he got the Cubs signed him, released him. Like 2 other teams signed him and released him before spring training started. He changed teams 4 times and put a uniform on. So that's all that. But I don't know. We can worry about worry about the bench on the 17th of March when they're in Japan. That's the other thing. Like, how many guys do you take to Japan? You must take a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because you're playing exhibition games, and then if somebody gets hurt, you've got to have the guy there. So,
yeah, I'm almost wondering if you get Bregman, let's just say, which I still think is not likely, but if you do, then you can make Shaw your kind of like your super utility guy, kind of like a Zobrist type. That would definitely make that whole thing a lot stronger.
That was my whole
Nico. Yeah,
that was my whole big picture for. You get Bregman, and he's like the perfect guy for Shaw to emulate. They are basically the exact same size.
Yep.
They have almost the same leg kick, so Shaw can actually see his swing put into use by somebody who's been successful with it. They're both college shortstops who became third basemen. Bregman apparently is like an awesome guy in the clubhouse. Everybody loves him. He's a leader.
Yeah.
And Nico we don't know what's going on with his arm. So there could be adequate, it's not like getting Bregman means Shaw doesn't get to play. Craig's going to be able to find ways to use him. So you don't have to, it shouldn't stunt his development. It should enhance it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have no problem with that. And I don't even know if Triantos needs that many more at bats. Maybe he's better served to have on the roster.
Yeah, I mean he's been in the system for 5 years. That sound right?
How old is he?
He's 24? In his early 40s.
Convert him to reliever.
He played at Arizona State with Barry Bonds. He got bought out of the Cubs bought him out of his Arizona State commitment. He never went. He's only 21, but he has been with the Cubs.
Maybe he's just had enough at bats where I thought he was 24.
Since 2021. So 4 full seasons in the minors.
Yeah.
And parts of 2 seasons in Double-A. Very little in 23. 3 games. But it was a good 3. It was a very important 3. And then 89 last year, and then he finished up with the Iowa Cubs. Where he just missed, though. He didn't get the tutelage of David Bodie. Which is probably why. But yeah, he's
where's David Bodie now? Because he might come back.
No, Bodie signed. Thank God. But Madrigal still has not, which still scares me.
No, Birdie is the new Madrigal.
Bodie turned down the Cubs to go to the Dodgers, just like Tanner Scott. So it's AAA still Albuquerque, Reno, somewhere there where he's going to be spending all his time. But yeah, there's Triantos. 4 years in the minors, 24 homers, 64 doubles. Slug 417 slug in the minors. It's like, uh-oh. Better pick that. Maybe as he fills out, it'll be fine. Well, and that's true. I have been. If the Cubs are open to keeping some of these younger players, if they show in spring training that they're ready, then they may very well have a far more versatile bench than what I'm giving them credit for now. And even if it doesn't happen right away, if it happens by June, that would be nice, because I just feel like you're handcuffing your manager. So we'll see. We'll see if David Robertson shows up and the average age of your roster goes way up. Maybe you keep Triantos to bring it down because it looks better on your spreadsheet. I don't know.
Who's the Cubs main pinch hitter though? Can you remember back in the we'll have some talk here for the old guys. They always had a Richie Hebner or Thad Bosley, Jerry Morales. What is a pinch hitter?
What's Henry Cotto up to these days?
Henry Cotto was good.
Yeah,
that guy was good.
Henry went on he went on the disabled list with the Yankees. Do you remember why?
No.
He suffered a punctured eardrum. He was cleaning his ears in the dugout with a Q-tip, and somebody bumped into him, and he jammed it all the way through his eardrum.
Wow, that's fucking crazy.
Number one, why are you cleaning your ears in the dugout? You're supposed to, and you're not supposed to put anything smaller than your elbow into your ear. That's what your doctor would tell you. Gary Varsho.
Gary Varsho was good, yeah. Jay Johnstone,
yeah.
I think Thad Bosley might be the best pinch hitter the Cubs ever had, though.
Better than Lenny Harris?
There was a couple good ones recently, right? I mean, Tommy La Stella could hit a fastball in the ninth inning. Who else did they have? That was pretty.
When
good.
He wasn't leaving the team to go play video games at his parents' house. They said the person when he came back, Theo had to go to the clubhouse and talk to the guys, and Rizzo was pissed. He did not want him to come back. He could not believe that Tommy would leave. And apparently when Tommy came back, Theo had to let Rizzo just ream him out in the clubhouse in front of everybody. And once Rizzo was done, he looked at Theo and said, "Okay, he can come back." He just needed to air it all out. And then he's like,
"That's
okay,
awesome.
fine."
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally appreciate that.
And if I was Tommy, I'd be like, hey, Brian Sandberg did the same thing once. Everybody thinks he's great. Yeah, who else from those? Munenori Kawasaki. I guess he was not a great pinch hitter. You don't see it as much, right? There's not as many teams that just have a guy who their well, especially now with the DH.
Yeah, and Steve Stone always taught us it always had to be a lefty because, the kids, many closers were right-handed, so you always have a good left-handed hitter on the bench. Richie Hebner, he was a good one.
Let's see. The player with the most pinch hits in Cubs history, you were right, Thad Bosley.
Yeah, he was good.
And he only was there for 4 years. I wanted a list of the. This is just a Jordan Bastion.
Henry Cotto would be on my all-time bench, though.
I liked Henry. I thought he was a good useful player.
He really was. And I actually, for a second there, when I was a kid, I thought he caught that Steve Garvey home run.
Yeah.
It wasn't that close.
Nope. Okay, according to Jordan Bastion, the top 5 pinch hitters in Cubs history. This is not the most, but Thad apparently had the most pinch hits, but the best. Thad, number 1. Number 2, Dwight Smith.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Which number is 3, weird, though, because, you remember him as a starting left fielder.
Yeah, he played, he started quite a while. Although, he kept losing the left field job, and he would become a pinch hitter. Number 3, Glenn Allen Hill. He holds the Cubs single season record for most pinch hit homers.
Okay, there you go.
Do you know how many that is? In one season, how many do you think the most is?
6.
4.
Okay. I shot high.
Number 4, Tommy La Stella.
There you go.
Number 5, guy from our youth. Well, not our youth. Dom D'Alessandro, who played for the Cubs from 1940 to 1947. Did I miss 4? No, La Stella. Yeah. And then honorable mention, he had Larry Bittner. He has the most pinch hit RBIs in Cub history with 42. Dave Clark in 1997.
Oh yeah, Dave Clark was really good.
Had 22 RBIs as a pinch hitter.
Wow.
That's the most ever.
Yeah, he was good. Forgot about that.
Ian Happ has 5 homers and a 1.057 OPS in 66 pinch hitting appearances. Well, there you go. You don't need to start him. Just have him pinch hit. That'd be fine. We'll play Seiya and left. That's good. I don't know. Matt Merton. Was Matt Merton a good pinch hitter?
I don't remember that.
Now the Cubs, well, I mean, I guess I'm conflating Pat Tabler's bases loaded excellence with him also being a good pinch hitter. You know, they let that one get away. In a trade, I don't know, was it worth it? Who did they get?
Wait, well, Tabler went to the White Sox and part of the Steve Trout deal.
It was Pat Tabler, Scott Fletcher, Randy Martz, Dick Tidrow for Warren Brewster and Steve Trout.
Yeah. And Trout was really good.
Steve making headlines these days for all the wrong
84.
Let's see. Pat Tabler, career pitch hitting. That's the last thing we'll do before we'll get to the Bears and talk about exciting.
Yeah, there we go.
Let's see. Career splits.
Yeah, we're almost out of time.
This is taking me longer than it should. And he's not going to be any good at it anyway when we find out. Well, as a substitute... Oh, here it is. Here's pinch hitter. Not too bad. 128 pinch hit appearances for Pat Tabler. 4 doubles, only 1 homer, 25 RBIs. He had 265, 378, 333. So we get on base for you as a pinch hitter. So I was wrong.
He had some really good years in Cleveland.
Yeah. And the Royals.
That's true.
All right, so let's talk. We got a few minutes to talk about the Cubs.
You mean the Bears?
The Bears. The grown-up Cubs. The Bears. They have their coordinators now. I'm very excited about Declan Doyle. That was funny. There were Bear fans who were mad. Oh, they just went cheap. They got spent all their money on Dennis Allen, so they got a cheap offensive coordinator. He's only 28 years old. It's like, okay, your head coach is your play caller. He's basically your offensive coordinator. What he needs an offensive coordinator to do is all the scut work that he doesn't have time for. That's like a perfect job for an up and coming hotshot,
right? And it sounds
Doyle apparently is.
And it sounds like he's a promising kid. Like Sean Payton really liked him, and and Johnson definitely probably wants a guy that he can kind of groom to be like his protege, and like you said, do all the dirty work. But this kid's going to be set. I mean, if Johnson has success, like I kind of expect him to have, this kid's going to be an offensive coordinator before you know it. Yeah,
like a real one, like a play calling offensive coordinator,
right? Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, absolutely, I know what you mean.
But yeah, let's hope that's the issue.
It's funny to me when every time Ben is asked about his influences, he scares Bears fans.
Yes,
because they're Adam Gase and John Shoup. Like, whoa, what? Why?
Brian Laser. I'm like, what?
That's right. Bill, right? Bill
Like,
Laser.
what the or Bill Laser? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, did you just look up like most loathed offensive coordinators? The Bears history is. You know what I like? We're gonna just run all wide receiver screens like Gary Croton.
Yeah.
What? But clearly, he spent time in New Orleans with Sean Payton.
Mhm.
And even though he doesn't say it, Sean is clearly an influence, and this is part of it, right? That when he needed a young offensive coordinator, that's who we talked to, and Payton recommended this guy, and that's who they got. It's also he'd never met Dennis Allen ever.
No shit.
But that was a recommendation of Dan Campbell and Sean Payton because they had both coached with him before. And Allen's kind of a no-brainer, right? Like he hasn't just been a defensive coordinator, he's been a very good one in 2 places.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he runs a version of the cover 2. It's a more aggressive version than the one Eberflus runs.
Which I like. Yeah.
The guys, you're not like, you don't have to overhaul your defensive roster because guys don't fit in their spots. And so, it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah. I mean, he might not be as scary as a defensive coordinator as like Vic Fangio, but in a lot of ways it's similar because he's a really great coordinator, but just not quite good enough to be a head coach.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, part of the appeal of him is he's a good coordinator who's now failed as a head coach twice. So if he does a good job with the Bears, he's not leaving. Like he's not getting a third crack at being a head coach.
That's true. Yeah.
So if he does a good job, you've got him for the duration, probably. Like he can be like the Steve Spagnuolo to Ben Johnson's Andy Reid.
Yeah.
Just like a guy who's always there because it's like, well, no, he's been a head coach. He sucked at it. He's a really good defensive coordinator. Just, he's just going to stay.
Yeah. You'd much rather have it be that way than to have your offensive coordinator be the young guy that's going to get plucked. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather have the coordinator be, the guy
you don't want a hotshot young defensive coordinator and then you have success one year and then somebody steals him and now you're starting over. The offensive coordinator, if Ben has his way, that the offensive coordinator of the Bears probably changes every few years because they're graduating to go get a bigger role somewhere, which then makes that job attractive to the next up and coming guy because he's seen it work. That you go on and you get a job somewhere. It is funny though. There are people. I don't think people understand how titles work in. So Antoine Randall L. is the assistant head coach and the wide receivers coach. And there were people like, oh, he does he outrank the offensive coordinator? Okay, he's the assistant head coach because the Bears couldn't get him if they just made him wide receivers coach because he was the wide receivers coach of the Lions. You can't leave unless the Lions don't have to let him leave unless it's a promotion. So that became the promotion, which is why. But I also think they think very highly of him, and I think he's the Roma Dunze coach. I think that's like he did a really good job with Jameson Williams. And Jameson's a much harder guy to coach than Rome because Jameson's a knucklehead, who manages to find creative ways to injure and suspend himself, where you don't have to worry about that stuff with Rome, but he really made Jameson a professional wide receiver. And so now he'll be working obviously with all the wide receivers, but you've got a guy who should be a young star, and it's nice to pair him with somebody who is well respected and has already done this with another player. So I thought that when I saw that they were getting him, I thought that was good. Plus it's a homecoming for Antoine. Come back to Chicago. So that's nice. They haven't hired an offensive line coach yet. And everybody's like, that's the most important job, in the whole team is an offensive line coach. It's important. But I think it had to be Waddle and Sylvie. Last week had TJ, what the hell's TJ's name? He was the lineman for the Packers and for the Lions. I don't know why I can't think of his last name. Now he works for the Lions radio network. And TJ Lang. And they were talking about how, the Bears need to completely overhaul their offensive line. And he's like, well, yeah. He said, you've got holes there. But he said something I thought really interesting. He said the Lions, when they would talk to he was on the radio, like I don't know if he did pre and post game. He used to be a sideline guy. They would, the Lions, when they were getting ready for the Bears, were talking to him about the offensive line because he was an old offensive lineman. And they told him specifically, they said they didn't know why the Bear offensive line was so bad. Because talent-wise, they're completely adequate. But they always seem to block the wrong guys, terrible assignments. And the scheme is terrible. They could not understand how an offensive coordinator would draw up blocking schemes the way they were drawn up for the Bears. And so they felt it was the perfect storm of an offensive line that certainly couldn't be dominant. It wasn't good enough to be a dominant offensive line. And then just ridiculous blocking assignments. Even good offensive linemen would have struggled with the way the Bears were trying to get these guys to block. And then you took guys who were challenged. So his whole feeling was that Ben Johnson would help the offensive line in two ways. Number one, he'd help identify better talent for the interior line, but his offense would be easier for them to actually block. So I took that as hopeful, I think, that maybe the challenge of fixing the offensive line, it's still big, and it's the most important thing they have to do, might not be as big as we think. Because it's the Lions' view, at least when they were scouting the Bears, that offensive line should have been more productive than it was, even with the talent that they had on it. And then another example of that would have been that the Redskins actually do not have a good offensive line. But Cliff, of all people, schemed it up. And I heard this, I thought this analysis was really smart about the Commanders decided early on that they were just going to be really aggressive on fourth down. And so they basically, on third down plays, they would scheme them up for Jaden. If it was 3rd and 8, they would have a route combination to try to get the first down. But if it wasn't there immediately, he'd have a check down. And they're like, if we can get 5 yards on this, that's fine. Because we can go for it on 4th and 3. If 8 yards is there, get it. If it's not there, get something. And we'll go for it, and we'll make it. And they did a lot.
They sure did.
And the Bears did not do that kind of stuff for Caleb. And that was one of the huge differences between Jaden and Caleb was Jaden was almost never got those get out of the tackle and then get sacked. So instead of a 5-yard sack, it became an 11-yard sack. And that was part of the scheme. If somebody broke free and Jaden managed to get away from him, he knew he had a place to get the ball. It was going to be short of the first down, but it was going to be open because it was short of the first down. The defense would be we can rally to that guy. You don't have to get on him. He'd throw it out there, and they would tackle the guy short of the first down. But now the Commanders were, at least, depending on where they were on the field, they might have still been in it. 4th and 2 for them, they just didn't think was that big a deal.
No, more times than not, if you're on the other side of the 40, it isn't.
Yeah. And that's we'll see. I have a feeling that the Dan Campbell aggressiveness is not something that Ben was against. I think we're going to get that too. I think they're of like mind on that. It can be, if you scheme up a good play, it's hard to stop a team from getting 2 yards. For sure. And so you should be going for it more often.
4th down is a new 3rd down, yeah.
Unless you're the Bills and you somehow run, even with your enormous quarterback, you somehow run the tush push where he has to go off guard and has a 140-pound guy pushing him. They did that over and over again in that game. It's what are you doing?
That was pretty frustrating.
Oh, that was one thing I wanted to ask you about. because I didn't know this rule. That's a lot of people didn't know. Did you know the refs could give a team a touchdown?
I know. My wife was like in the other room making dinner. She's like, they said what? I'm like, oh, I don't know.
And Pereira was all over it. He was right before the guy said it. He's like, they can just give them a score. They can grant the Eagles a score. I'm like, what? No, they can't. And then the very next play, the little Hockey Lee Jr. is like, if this continues to happen, we have the option to grant a score. It's like, holy shit. I wanted to see it. I was really hoping that Luvu would just go recklessly throwing himself over the pile one more time so that I could just see them give the Eagles a touchdown.
I was just in it for all the memes that I was seeing on social media of Luvu like jumping over the guy who tackled the judge and stuff like that. It also reminded me of I don't know, remember when you were younger, or even if you did it recently, if you ever played somebody online, you got frustrated and you just started fucking around and just, aggravating them. It's like, That's what Washington looked like they were doing.
Yeah, we used to do that shit all the time in college. It was like, just take off, just start hitting the quarterback. And then there was a couple of years in Madden where if you injured the guy, the ambulance would come out on the field. We love that. Whenever you get the ambulance on the field, that was better than winning.
Exactly.
Like one of the best
best parts of swingers. His little legs are shaking. Well, one of the things I was going to say though about the Bears is this week I don't know if Rick Smith, like the Bears, like paid him to go on a goodwill tour this week, but he made them look better than they could ever ask for this week. Like, I don't know if you saw his he did a couple different interviews. Did one with Bill Zimmerman, and then he did one with Dan Bernstein and Layla. Who else? There was I think he went on one of the other podcasts, but anyway, he may have even done the ESPN.
This is Ben Johnson's agent.
And he was just singing the praises of the Bears process, as well as Kevin Warren especially. He just thinks that, and that was my suspicion too, because I was like, look, what's different here? And it just feels like Warren has got George's ear, and Warren's like, look, we've got to do things like the big boys now. And I think that was that's basically what Rick Smith had said, was like Warren just has escalated the organization into a different process, and that was one of the things that convinced them.
Yeah, that was my hope, was that because Kevin is a shoot for the moon, his personality is just that. It's why they don't have a stadium, why they haven't put a shovel in the ground to get the stadium yet.
Who cares if half the stuff he says is just like bullshit artist stuff? That's fine. That's what a good salesman does. That's what a good, leader of an organization can do, whether it's bullshit or not. You've got to try to aim high.
But yeah, to me, I felt like the biggest thing he would do is he would force the Bears not to settle. Like he wouldn't allow it. That's been their default forever, which was, this would be nice. But you know what? We could do this instead. I felt like the old Bears would have hired Mike McCarthy.
Totally. That's what I was afraid of.
They would have convinced themselves that, like, you know what? He's done it
here.
Before. He's a safer choice.
We like him.
He wants to be here.
Yeah, no, totally. That's what I was afraid of the whole time. And, again, he wouldn't have been the worst thing that would ever happen, but it would have just been the highest floor. Where at Ben Johnson, I actually right now have hope that he's the next Shanahan McVay.
Yeah. It's funny. The person I immediately, when I read I guess I saw it on Blue Sky. That might be the first big story that I saw broken, that I found out on Blue Sky, was that Ben Johnson, because nobody expected him to take the job on Monday. That wasn't supposed to happen.
The talk was Tuesday or Wednesday.
This was supposed to be a whole week of interviews, and then he wouldn't, they'd have to interview 2 other people and blah, blah, blah. And he'd go to Jacksonville and he'd go to Vegas, and then we'd have to wait. But when I saw that he had, and then I double checked to make sure it was first you had to make sure it wasn't a spam account. Then you had to make sure they hadn't Dave McGinnis did. That it was like, oh, hold on. Does he know that he's taken the job? I felt really good for Caleb. That's who I was immediately excited for, was this is the perfect thing. This is the bright young offensive mind paired with the hotshot second year quarterback. this is what Caleb needs to succeed. This is what the Bears needed, and they actually went and they did it. And I just felt like if they'd hired Mike McCarthy, you could easily defend it. But if you're Caleb, you'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
fine. I'll work with him. I don't know how excited I'll be, but I'll work with him.
It was a home run hire all the way. I mean, regardless of what happens, I don't have pretty much any doubt that he's going to be a great offensive coach. So unless he totally shits the bed as a head coach, I just don't see any downside in it. I just don't think that he will. It seems like he's surrounding himself with a good process, especially bringing in a guy like Dennis Allen's already been a head coach. I think he's going to be set up pretty well. And he stayed probably a year or two longer than most coordinators would have. So he probably really did his diligence.
Yeah. The comparison I made is I have an actual person in mind. I felt like because Ben, he very well could have been a head coach 2 cycles ago. He was really supposed to be a head coach last year.
Right.
And now he is this year. I felt like he's been getting ready to be a head coach for at least 3 years. And I equated this. I have a friend who, when she got engaged, she immediately pulled out this huge binder. She had been planning her wedding since she was 12. She was 26. So this is 14 years of research and samples and stuff in this huge binder. And I felt like Ben Johnson was the coaching equivalent of that. He's been like getting his binder ready to be a head coach for like 3 full years.
That's funny.
And as opposed to Matt Nagy, who I think didn't realize he actually was ever going to get offered a job until like 48 hours before he had the press conference with the Bears. And it certainly coached like it. Yeah, the whole thing it's the kind of thing they should have been doing for the last 40 years, and they haven't. And so I understand why people are skeptical. Well, the Bears, they'll fuck it up. But they didn't fuck this up. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work because it's hard to be a head coach. It's not going to fuck up because they didn't go through the right stages and do it. That was the other thing I was going to say about how they don't know I'm a big David Shaw fan, but when they interviewed him to be the offensive coordinator, I'm like, they're not hiring him to be the offensive coordinator. He's the Rooney Rule interview because you have to do it for the coordinators too. I'm like, I have no illusion that they're going to bring David Shaw in to be the offensive coordinator. And I'm sure he would have been fine at it. But I was people that were mad about that. Well, they hired a 28-year-old when they could have had him. It's like, well, I think they had to interview him because they wanted to hire the 28-year-old. I mean, Brad Biggs had the Declan Doyle thing like 5 days before they hired him. So he knew that that's who they wanted, and they just had to go through the stuff to get it done.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting. They've still got some coaches to hire, and but a lot of that stuff happens at the Senior Bowl, and that's where they all are right now. So the staff, I think, will be pretty well done. They brought Richard Hightower back to be the special teams coach because when you get a chance to bring a guy back who managed to get 2 game-winning field goals blocked in back-to-back weeks, you do it. It's funny. There were people going nuts about that too, and it's like, honestly, that he is a good special teams coach. He's been a good special teams coach before. The Bears actually had pretty good special teams last year. Yes, that was very embarrassing. The Bears still insist that the Packers cheated on their blocked field goal, and people said they didn't change, but they did. They changed the guy who lined up in that spot the next week. I don't remember if it was Matt Pryor was either the first week or the second week, and it wasn't him. So they didn't completely ignore the fact, but it looks very bad when basically the exact same part of your line allows a blocked field goal in back-to-back weeks. I get it, but I don't think it's that big a deal. All right. Yeah. Well, that was fun, and we're getting closer to baseball. There'll be more news next week. We can talk all about all the Padres pitchers that are coming to the Cubs because maybe that's what they'll do. Do you want King? Do you want Cease? Judd's like, how about both? What do you want for both? And he just gets them both, and then he signs Bregman too.
And shit, what Darvish has got to be at least over 40. You could throw him in the bullpen.
Oh, I'd bring you back in a heartbeat.
Totally.
He's one of my. I don't know why, but he's one of my all-time favorite Cubs. I love that dude. And All right.
Yeah, I'll see you next Thursday.
Many of us have herpes.
No, I thought it generally sucked. I didn't think it was a specific suck. I thought it was like an all-encompassing type of suck. So, we're going to try and rectify that. But for right now, I'm going to be pretty pissed about it.
It's fitting. It's got to be done with one of the best games of all time. Just unbelievable. Got to congratulate the Dolan family.
Sean, my podcast co-host Andy, you were his favorite player growing up.
Oh, thank you so much. Awesome.